Barbie Girl, and I'm here at the 6th Leeds Zombie Film Festival. For your viewing pleasure tonight, we have Zombies!
A zombie film festival wouldn't be complete without a spot of Italian splatter cinema. So here we go with Cemetery Man, although this movie is also known by its original title of Dellamorte Dellamore, which translates as Of Love and Death. Yes folks, there is a love story in there. It just so happens to be within one of the most offbeat, random and downright bizarre zombie movies of all time. But don't worry about that, gorehounds, because there's still plenty of things to keep you happy. Mainly zombies and guns and sex. Oh my. Francesco is the caretaker of a local cemetery who falls in love with a woman he sees crying beside the grave of her recently deceased husband. Can't say I blame him really, considering that she's smoking hot and the only other company he keeps is his bumbling assistant, Nagi. Luckily for Francesco, this beautiful widow is instantly interested in him once he tells her that the cemetery has a nice crypt.
Like in my dreams.
This is my dream.
Oh, I couldn't ask for anything more.
In fact, she seems to get turned on by it. Ew. Next thing you know, they're having sex on top of her husband's grave. Yep, that's right folks. This movie contains gratuitous female nudity. Oh yeah, there's zombies in this movie too. You see, the dead have a rather pesky habit of rising from the grave after the 7th day to snack on the flesh of the living. A pretty common occurrence in Italy, I'm sure. So Francesco spends a lot of his spare time killing these zombies before they descend on the rest of the town. Unfortunately for Francesco, the prospect of him getting his dick wet makes him forget that it was 7 days ago that the husband of the hot chick he is currently fucking at this very moment passed away. Hubby comes back as a zombie and bites his smoking hot wife, meaning that she dies as well, so Francesco has to shoot both of them in the head. At this point, Francesco starts to lose his grip on reality and ends up getting a visit from the fucking Grim Reaper himself, who has these words of wisdom to say.
If you don't want the dead coming back to life, why don't you just kill the living? Shoot them in the head.
What? Francesco then starts going around shooting people in the head and checking their names off in the phone book. He also starts seeing strange alternative versions of the widow he fell in love with, all of which find themselves strangely attracted to him. However, one of them has a phobia of penises, as you do, so he decides to go to the doctors and get it cut off, with a pair of fucking garden shears. Ouch. Okay, this is starting to get strange now. But this is a bloody good movie, very funny, and that's really the whole appeal. If you're looking for quite a different zombie movie, but one that still packs in plenty of blood, gore, guns and bare boobies, then Cemetery Man is well worth a watch. There's also a bizarre subplot involving Nagi, who falls in love with the mayor's daughter. Unfortunately, he seems to bugger up his chances with her when he accidentally pukes on her, and later she dies in an unfortunate traffic accident. However, she later comes back from the dead as a severed head, ends up killing her father, and falls in love with Nagi in return.
You threw up on me. How sweet.
You're welcome?
I think Cemetery Man was the biggest piece of shit I've ever seen. Honestly, I'm never negative about films, but that was awful. It had so many endings. Dellamorte Dellamore is the worst film I've ever seen. And I've seen some fucking awful films. I've seen Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion, and that's a fucking awful film. That was worse.
Well, for me, with Cemetery Man, it started off being packed off with, you know, plenty of zombies, plenty of guns, and plenty of tits. But then near the end, we're not enough.
No.
But by the end, it turned into an episode of The Twilight Zone. And the ending, I won't spoil it for you if you've not seen the ending, but the ending just left us all thinking, what?
Dellamorte Dellamore, loved it. Rupert Everett, so would, even if he had to bring her along with him, still would. She wasn't enough to, you know, push a crock over, I have to say.
Not to get you really chopped off, no.
Those nipples, biggest nipples I've ever seen, like a couple of saucers with an aspirin sat on them. Don't know what that was all about, but, you know, I really liked it, I did. I thought it was funny as fuck, especially when he came in and said to her, daughter, what are you doing on the telly? I liked it, I thought it was brilliant.
Although it may have a title that suggests it's a zombie porno movie, especially when you look at the trailer, Harold's Going Stiff is actually a very touching movie. Shot in Sheffield on a shoestring budget, this uses a mock TV documentary type format to follow an old age pensioner called Harold, who was literally going stiff. At first this is put down to old age or arthritis, but it turns out that the cause of this is much sinister. Poor old Harold is actually turning into a zombie. In fact, this condition is spreading. Onset Rigor's disease causes its victims to lose their mental faculties, start behaving aggressively, and develop a walk like John Cleese due to a stiffening of the limbs. Unfortunately for Harold, this condition has spread to epidemic proportions, and now a bunch of baseball bat carrying nut jobs have taken it upon themselves to become vigilantes, which doesn't bode well for poor Harold. The bond between Harold and his home helper, Penny, is the main core of the film. They're both lonely and forgotten members of society that are just looking for love. Indeed, like Mark Price's zero-budget zombie movie, Colin, Harold's Going Stiff shows the result of the zombie epidemic from the zombie's point of view and those around him. It can be a very downbeat and dark movie at times, but it makes sure to add a little sprinkling of humour along the way, such as Penny having irritable bowel syndrome, which means that she has to keep popping off into the woods for a poo. Remember folks, medical conditions are only funny if they involve shitting. Overall, it's a very enjoyable, touching story of an unlikely couple, and a thought-provoking look at how some people in today's modern society become forgotten about. It just so happens to have zombies in it. Admittedly though, Harold is the nicest zombie you'll ever meet. You'll want to have him over for tea and biscuits. Or tea and brains.
George A. Romero's seminal zombie classic, Dawn of the Dead, was no stranger to the Leeds Zombie Film Festival. It was actually shown at the very first Leeds Zombie Film Festival, and we got the Zack Snyder 2004 remake during the second one. Yes, okay, moving on. But this time, we had Dawn of the Dead on again, but this time it was Zombie Dawn of the Dead. This was the European version of the film.
The reason why there was a completely separate European version is because Italian film director and producer of this movie, Dario Argento, agreed to put up half the budget in exchange for distribution rights in non-English speaking countries. This then led to his own version of the film, which was dramatically recut. It's weird, but here, it feels almost like a different film. Argento didn't seem to be particularly interested in the range of genre types that Romero's version covered. This version seems to run at a much faster pace than the others, and it definitely has more emphasis on action. Although bizarrely for such an action-packed edit, Argento's Dawn actually cuts out a lot of the major action and gore sequences, including the infamous helicopter zombie. This version of the film also changes a lot of the music soundtrack, which really alters the overall tone. When there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk the earth. It follows on quite nicely from Night of the Living Dead, although it isn't really required that you watch that one first. It quickly becomes apparent that there's never grown epidemic of zombies rising from the dead all over the place and walking around the cities and countrysides to find some warm human flesh to snack on. Amid all this chaos, 2 Philadelphia SWAT team members, a traffic reporter and his television executive girlfriend take refuge in a secluded shopping mall. From there, it centres around these 4 people and their attempts to live a life as normally as possible in a world plagued by the living dead. After ridding them all of its brain-dead consumers and barricading themselves in with a couple of trucks, the 4 characters then set up a homestead, surrounded by all the things that they're going to need for quite a while. From food to firearms. In this world gone mad, food, fuel and water are now in short supply. But what is really getting on the nerves of our intrepid team of 4 heroes is that they can't find any cigarettes! Ah! Hey, now's a good time as any to quit, don't you think? However, one of the SWAT team guys, Roger, then begins to slowly succumb to the wounds he suffered during a zombie attack, and eventually becomes one of the undead himself. Or is it the Grinch? It's hard to tell really. Either way, he needs to die! After giving zombie Grinch Roger a quick death by headshot, we then watch the 3 remaining characters struggling to cope with life as it now is.
The word implies an interspecies activity. These creatures cannot be considered human. They prey on humans. They do not prey on each other. That's the difference. They attack and they feed only on warm human flesh. Intelligence, seemingly little or no reasoning power, but basic skills remain are more remembered behaviors from normal life. There are reports of these creatures using tools, but even these actions are the most primitive. The use of external articles as bludgeons and so forth. I might point out to you that even animals will adopt the basic use of tools in this manner. These creatures are nothing but pure, motorized instinct. We must not be lulled by the concept that these are our family members or our friends.
They are fortunate enough to have the luxury of safety in a crumbling world, but they're unhappy. But before the cabin fever can work any permanent damage, a gang of bikers turn up to the mall and things start to get interesting again real damn quick. George A. Romero's Night of the Living Dead was the first real chiller of the zombie genre, but when he made Dawn of the Dead several years later, it completely redefined the genre itself. If all other zombie movies were, say, Burt Whedon, then Dawn of the Dead was the Jimi Hendrix that blew them all away, or rather, gnawed at their bones. Nom 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 nom. The film contains some truly gripping moments. Steve's losing battle with a group of zombies in the elevator, leading to his own zombification, springs to mind. Being trapped in a small place full of people who want to eat you up can't be much fun. No, sir. However, it does have its funny moments too, believe it or not. You can never really get enough of watching zombies struggle to walk on an escalator, or taking a custard pie to the face. And those blood pressure monitors are a death trap. Some of the special makeup effects seem a little inconsistent from zombie to zombie, although some zombies do look suitably horrific. Others just look like they've had some green or grey face paint slapped on. Also, some of the blood looks a little too bright red to be considered realistic. However, a lot of the scenes where the zombies are pulling their victims apart like some sort of delicious Chinese pork dish still look just as gruesome today. The special effects were created by makeup maestro Tom Savini, who also did a lot of the stunts and even has a part of the lead of the biker gang too. The zombified version of this character also shows up in Land of the Dead, shot several years later. In fact, Savini's zombie and gore effects were so effective here, it would get him more and more work in Hollywood, including Friday the 13th. And it would actually take another 7 years for him to top his work here, when he reunited with Romero again to do Day of the Dead. But in Dawn of the Dead, we get to see heads explode, we see machetes going through a skull, a screwdriver is plunged into a zombie's brain, lots and lots of goodies. And you never once see him or Romero backing away from it. So, the story. Well, you gorehounds out there will have to wait, as you don't even get a sniff of the undead for the first 30 minutes. However, this is intentional, as the tension and suspense is instead provided by Dominic Brunt and his real-life wife, Joanne Mitchell, who play a married couple, Alex and Meg. Their marriage is on the rocks. You get the impression that the marriage started off happily enough, but as the years have gone on, the couple have seemingly grown apart and have sought solace elsewhere. Meg has become very career-driven, as well as being a fitness fanatic, whilst Alex has sought his comfort in the bottom of a bottle. It's also hinted at, but never actually implied, that they may have been in some infidelity along the way. So the two of them leave the kids with Meg's mother and go off to an isolated cottage in the countryside in a sort of last-ditch attempt to make or break this marriage. There is a real sense that Alex and Meg were close, once, and they seriously believe they can be close again. Right now they don't dislike each other, but they're more like friends than anything. Indeed, for the first 30 minutes we really get to know Alex and Meg, and we hope that deep down, that by the time the end credits have started rolling, they would have actually rekindled their love for each other and be back on their way to Gran's house to pick up the kids and be a happy family once more. But, despite the best efforts of both of them, the sly little comments and snide remarks keep finding their way in there, and it does seem that this marriage is not going to survive. This is further made worse during the first night together, when Meg goes to bed alone and Alex ends up sleeping on the sofa, with his ever-present bottle of wine for company. The following morning, Meg finds out that her mobile phone, which she thought had gone missing all this time, had actually been hidden from her by Alex so that he would have more of her attention. She's not particularly happy about this, so she goes off for a morning jog in a bit of a huff. Whilst out on her jog, Meg checks her mobile phone to see that there's been several missed calls from her mum. Now, they are literally in the middle of nowhere, with no mobile phone signal, so calling for help isn't really an option when a ruddy great big blood-drenched maniac comes charging at her from over the dales. Meg, understandably, runs for her life, but even she isn't quick enough to outrun her undead attacker. After receiving a nasty bite on the leg, Meg manages to return back to the relative safety of the house, but it's already too late. The infection has started. And it soon starts to get worse, as the bite mark quickly goes from, "Ooh, that looks a bit sore," to completely fucking nasty. Now, I don't know if Dominic intended to direct, act and edit the film altogether from the start, but it just sort of ended up that way. Now, from watching the film, it does seem as if he was influenced by a number of zombie films, the most obvious being 28 Days Later, as the zombies in Before Dawn certainly share a few characteristics to the one in Danny Boyle's infection thriller. In other words, these zombies are red-eyed, they're rabid, and they can run like fuck. Indeed, they're more like wild animals rather than the usual Romero-style shuffling deadheads. The only difference with these zombies is that the infection basically starts off inside the body and then starts pushing its way out. This results in bucket loads of claret literally oozing out of the zombies' bodies. In fact, there is so much gore coming out of the infected, it's actually mentioned during the making of documentary that these aren't zombies, they're dombies, named in honour of Dominic Brunt there. What's worth pointing out is that this film is set in England, it's set in the Yorkshire Dales. As you can imagine, it's not like an American zombie movie where the hero can just pull out a gun and blow the head off a zombie. This is demonstrated a number of times where Alex finds himself desperately looking for makeshift weapons in the garage or in the kitchen. And let's not beat about the bush here. Alex is no hero. The man is a coward, and a selfish one at that. He has no history of being involved in anything violent his entire life. He's certainly not up for having a scrap with these charging deadheads. Any fights he has with a zombie are desperate and frantic. Another thing to mention about the zombies is that they remain virtually comatose if no one is around. They'll just stand there staring into space until some fresh meat happens to walk past their line of vision. At this point, they'll snap back into life and attack in a savage fury. In one of the highlights of the film, Alex has a desperate fight with a zombie in the garage, which is truly the stuff of nightmares, as it's clear that this zombie isn't going to give up easily. And later on, when Meg comes downstairs looking like death warmed up and covered in gore, it's clear that all is not well. We're with Alex all the way at this point as he watches in stunned disbelief at the living nightmare that his normal, if somewhat difficult life, has now become. Nevertheless, despite the fact that his wife has become a zombie, Alex still feels that he can save her, and in doing so, save his marriage as well. However, when another character, Stephen, turns up to the house, he tells Alex that there are more of these zombies running around in the outside world. But Stephen makes the mistake of mentioning that the zombies seem to calm down whilst they're eating warm human flesh, like a pack of wolves eating a freshly caught kill and ignoring any other potential prey that comes past them. At this moment, Alex is only really hearing what he wants to hear, and believing that giving Meg something, or someone, to eat will snap her back to normal, he stabs Stephen in the back with a kitchen knife and sends him down the cellar where he'd previously chucked his bloodthirsty wife into. Dinner time, Meg. Unfortunately, this does not cure Meg, and despite his best intentions, despite his best efforts, Alex is unable to save his wife, he is unable to save his marriage, and ultimately, he is unable to save himself. It's certainly a downbeat zombie movie. It does end on a very bleak, tragic note. You get the impression that if this film had been made in America, that the hero would have triumphed, he would have redeemed himself at the end, he may very well have saved his marriage, he may even have saved his wife, even if he does ultimately lose her in the end. But here, the ending is as bleak and as dark as any I've seen in a zombie movie in quite a long time. And the final scene that takes place as the end credits are rolling is likely to haunt you for weeks. I'll be honest here, folks, this is the first time I watched a zombie movie and felt myself getting choked up with tears welling up in my eyes. The scene in the cellar where Alex is showing Meg a video of their children playing on her mobile phone is powerful stuff. It's a movie that will break your heart and eat your guts.
Anybody else? Oh, where are you? You can put your hand back up. Okay. Here you go. Hi there. Firstly, fantastic, mate.
Oh, thank you very much.
Honestly.
Sorry, it was a bit
so
depressing and everything.
I've got two questions actually. First one, what are you doing in Emmerdale after that?
I love Emmerdale. I'm very honest with it. I'll send everything else down apart from Emmerdale. I love Emmerdale.
Oh, but are you going to direct another zombie film?
We've done a short, but not another zombie film. We've kind of said all we wanted to say about zombies with this one, so we're going to do a thriller about a debt collector that's unbelievably gory and violent. That's all we're doing.
Starring Marlon. Well, okay, anybody else? Anybody else got any more questions for this dick? Okay. Here's the mic.
Thank you. The fight scenes were awesome. Well done. They look very brutal there. Any injuries to yourself? Or
yeah. Dave Nolan, who kind of designed the movements of the zombies and worked out all the fight movement. Mark Price, where's Mark? Hello, Mark.
Is there?
He's got an executive producer, he was a friend of Mark's, and he kind of just turned up and said, this is how they move, this is what we're going to do. But so he was the garage zombie, he works out all the fights between us. And there's two bits, actually. Dave Nolan scratched all the way down his head until he was bleeding down the back of his head, but he just went, we'll just carry on. But also my wife in the outtakes, if you buy the DVD. When I picked her up and threw her on the floor, we just thought it'd be a great shot. So I said, oh, just pick her up and I'll flop you on the floor. There's a crash mat there, but the crash mat was that thick. So when we said action, it just went, don't worry, just keep rolling. Keep rolling that car, keep rolling that car. And I went, ah. On the outtakes, you can hear just going, but my wife's at the back there, hiding. So we got the shot, so I realised it, and I ran behind the camera to look at it, and I looked at the shot and went, that's amazing, that's great, where is everyone? And everybody would run around and go, Jesus Christ, you okay?
Can you say, oh, you're so funny like you did in the film?
Oh, you're so funny. Should we go to the pub for 10 minutes? One more question.
Do you know when Shane from Shameless shows up?
Yeah.
Right. He says, looks like she left you for good this time.
Yeah.
So that was intentional, but obviously he couldn't have known that she left, right?
Sorry?
How did... Well...
Oh, now! Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no, that's interesting, yeah, because from one of the parts that was taken out. Oh, Yeah, there's a little speech where I say, she left me, and he goes, oh, the fuck you bitch, my wife left me, and all this, but we thought it was a bit much and it was too plotty, so that stayed in, but you...
Give her a prize!
Give her a prize, alright, yeah, fair enough, I'll get you some prizes.
Somebody's had a very interesting cigarette in that area.
So, we're going to come back in 7 minutes and watch Cockneys vs Zombies, and Matthias is staying...
Stop smoking and enjoy the film.
Yeah. Cheers, let's go. Come on!
Next Next up is Cockneys versus Zombies, where it turns out that if you're a member of the living dead, the last place you want to end up is down London's East End, because you're going to get your fucking dead head kicked in. Cockney brothers Terry and Andy are desperate to save their granddad's care home, so decide on getting tooled up and robbing a local bank. Meanwhile, on a Docklands building site, a plague of zombies are accidentally released from a 350-year-old cursed tomb. Before you know it, all of old London town is under attack from the Night of the Living Brown Bread. Amongst all this chaos, can Terry and Andy save their granddad and still make off with their loot before it all goes a bit pear-shaped? Whilst it's good to see former EastEnder / Bionic Woman / Doctor Who companion Michelle Ryan mixed up with the zombies, the highlight of the cast has got to be the golden oldies, as former Bond girl Honor Blackman gets all tooled up with a shotgun, and Cockney legend Alan Bricktop Ford comes out with the best lines of the entire film. Unfortunately, this would be the last production that the late Richard Bryce would be part of before he passed away earlier this year. But to be honest, when your last film role sees you as an old age pensioner who mows down a pack of zombies with a Uzi 9mm you've got strapped to your Zimmer frame, you've definitely gone out on a high note. You certainly wouldn't have seen that on The Good Life. Richard Bryars, we salute you, sir.
Fuck! It's not gonna make it.
Oh, here we go.
Judging by the way it ended, are there any plans to do a sequel?
No.
Please?
Well, absolutely. Scousers versus Zombies. Not at the moment. I kind of like to think that we put everything in this film, but you know. So I think let's leave it as this one and not do a sequel for once.
Any more questions?
But I didn't want to end it on a downbeat. You see, I wanted to do a zombie film that ends on an up note, which is quite rare.
Here we go.
As long as it's entertaining, does it really matter?
Fine. Anybody? Oh, right. Oh, miles away. Jesus. Excuse me, bro. Put the hand up there. Sorry.
Yeah, you had some pretty A-list British celebrities in there. How did you get them interested in zombie films?
Well, all that men I met for coffee and somehow persuaded them to do the role. I don't know how or why, but I guess, I mean, first of all, of course, we have to dedicate this to Richard Bryars, who passed away. He was amazing because when working with him, you really feel 40 years of comedy experience. Just from the hat he picks and the his slippers he wants to wear. All the other guys want to look smart and wear a suit. He knows, no, Matthias, I've got to have the slippers and taking any line like, oh, it's a zombie, but then turning it into something like, oh, it's a zombie. Working with someone like that was amazing. He called me up. When it came out, and he said to me, Matthias, I just went to see a movie, and you know what? It was marvelous, and my nephews loved it. And thank you very much. And it was so sweet of him, and we all knew he was sort of not very well, and may he rest in peace.
Yeah.
We just put the hands up. Somebody put the hand up around here. No, just somebody stretching. Anybody else? Oh, wait. Oh, gee. It really, geographically, it's been a nightmare.
Next question right in the front, please.
We put the hand up there.
Oh, yeah, you've got quite a few good stars there, and they're all obviously from the East End. Did you just kind of leave a lot of the jokes and stuff like that up to them? Because it was all pretty Cockney.
Well, the writer's from Scotland. Mr. We didn't try to go too Cockney, it's sort of all quite, we wanted everyone to understand it. Most of the stuff is in the script, and a couple of lines are improvised, but most of it is sort of in the script. And not that many actors are Cockneys there either, actually. with Jack Doolan and the Young'uns, and Alan Ford, of course. And Honor Blackman used to be a Cockney, but she had many, many elocution lessons.
Any more before we move on to the little break before our final film? Anybody else?
Well, the funny thing is with all the actors, 5 of the actors being over 75, because they don't get often offered roles where they can be in an ensemble and have an action hero role. So they were like coming up to me and she goes, I haven't worked with Tony since 1962. It's so great. Thank you. And I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't even close to being born then, but yeah. They were just really happy and great to work with. And Honor kind of came up to me when we had the breakout scene and kind of offered up the weapons to the pensioners. And you have the egg whisk, the fork, the knife, the cereals, and she went, no, Matthias, I want the jackhammer. And so she took that, and then she didn't hear me call cut originally, so she took out 20 zombies, and then she realised, no, cut. And she came up to me and said, Matthias, I'm so sorry. On the 12th zombie, I hit him on the wrong side of the head, so the cheek won't work to camera. I'm so sorry. And I was very impressed that she was so with it that she knew exactly how to do the fighting. She was concentrating. Sorry? Come on, run.
How did you hit a zombie?
I'm not running up to him again, he just keeps putting his arm in the air. Right, we probably ought to get on with the evenings. We're supposed to be out here by midnight, and that's so not going to happen. So, thank you so much. Thank you, Everybody's brilliant. So thank you for that.
Way! 40-something waster Juan spends his waking hours foraging for junk to sell and ways to make a quick buck, alongside his equally bone-idle best mate, Lazaro. Life in post-revolution Cuba isn't particularly easy, so it actually becomes a running gag when zombies suddenly start appearing and shuffling around the streets. One woman in particular just looks out of her tenement building and tuts, it all looks the same to me. Indeed, like many great zombie movies, Shaun of the Dead carries a political message as well. These people are so used to surviving in atrocious circumstances, a zombie invasion is merely seen as another inconvenience. Nevertheless, Jean and Lazaro see a money-making opportunity and set up a zombie dispatching company called Shaun of the Dead, with the motto of, "We kill your relatives." Armed with such makeshift weapons as machetes, harpoons, paddles, and Dennis the Menace-style catapults, they take to the streets and dispose of unwanted zombies in exchange for a small fee. In a way, this movie is like what would happen if Shaun of the Dead was filmed in Cuba. It's a story about two friends trying to make the best out of a bad situation. That bad situation just so happens to be a zombie apocalypse. There's a brief underwater sequence, which seems to be a homage to Lucio Fulci's classic zombie flesh eaters, and there's a number of crowd-pleasing mass zombie slaying scenes which really make this movie ideal for a zombie film festival. So Mick, this was your first zombie film festival. What did you think of it?
I thought it was pretty cool actually, just a shame of not being previous years.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, good sound effect, Dave. Yeah, I thought it was really good. I'm not keen on the first one.
You weren't keen on Cemetery Man?
No, I wasn't keen on that one. Yeah, I liked Cockneys vs Zombies and Planet Dead. Dawn of the Dead was okay, I've seen it before. So it's like, treading all ground there, but I thought Cockneys vs Zombies and Planet Dead were the best ones. So
Good. You coming again next year?
Oh yeah.
We've converted you then.
Got my t-shirt.
Got the t-shirt.
Got my t-shirt and I've got my DVD signed by Don.
Yep. Good man.
Literally bought a t-shirt.
Yeah. Don's a legend.
Hello. It's just us three now. We're the only ones who've survived out of our little group.
I've had to take my contacts out because they were freaking killing me. All day I've persevered with them, but now I'm in the pub. Sod it. Contacts
Your
are
eyes
out.
still looking a bit.
Yeah.
So, favourite film?
Favourite film of today was probably, well, Dawn of the Dead is my favourite zombie movie.
Likewise.
So,
Likewise.
Yeah. But discounting that, I would say I really liked Cockneys vs Zombies, which I didn't think I would.
Yeah.
I honestly thought that was going to be cheesy, bullshitty. No, really, really good movie. Didn't really need the zombies. It was a good old film even without the zombies. And I don't say that about zombie films a lot. So yeah, cool.
It was like if Shaun of the Dead had like taken a walk into the same neighbourhood as Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. You know?
Pretty much. But yeah, Michelle Ryan. Why not?
Did I hear some flapping sounds coming from your end when Michelle Ryan came out?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Keel on that. My favourite zombie movie of all time is always Dawn of the Dead. But I did really enjoy Cockneys versus Zombies, and I like Shaun of the Dead as well. Some people didn't like Cemetery Man. I liked it, but it did get a bit weird at one point. At one point, it did stop sort of being a.
At one point, at every point, it got weird. I didn't like it, just for the record.
But yes, another resounding success, and I hope Mark keep this going. It's been nice to see him again. It's been nice to see Joe Mitchell as well, who was in, Dom's wife and his wife in before Dawn as well. So yeah, we've had a really good time. We've had a couple more guys join our collective, our horde, and here's to another one. So it's the Big Daddy D signing out for another year at the Leeds Zombie Film Festival.
Cheers!
Cheers!
Cheers!